Hey everybody, welcome back to Conarchy's Money Corner. New look on Conarchy's Money Corner. I flipped my desk here. That's why it looks different. So I'm not fighting the windows behind me and I've got that sunlight coming in on me. I want to talk to you about, on this Conarchy's Money Corner, sort of a piggyback of the last Conarchy's Money Corner that I did. The last one I told you about credit cards and keeping your credit utilization ratio, the balance of your credit cards versus the limit on your credit cards, keeping that at 30% or less. I'm going to take the credit card mantra and run more with it on this one, talking to you about the difference between the use of a traditional credit card versus a debit card. Now, I know many people tend to use a debit card because of that old adage of if your parent, you probably heard it from your parents, if you don't have the cash, you shouldn't be buying it. So a lot of people think they're doing good by using a debit card. Well, after you hear this, I think you may think differently. Every time that I see a client hand me a bank statement that has all those debit card transactions on there, I explain this to them, and I want to explain it to you too if you happen to be doing that yourself. What you have to understand that there are not the same types of protection on a credit card and a debit card. You have a great deal of protection on a credit card where you have very little protection on a debit card. So let's first talk about the traditional credit card. What you have to understand on a traditional credit card is that you have no liability when fraud happens on your credit card. Some knucklehead gets a hold of your credit card information and puts fraudulent charges on there. You're not liable. In fact, you're protected by the Fair Credit Billing Act, and on top of that, all four of the major credit card companies, American Express, Discover, Visa, and MasterCard, all have zero liability policies that protect the consumer if fraud were to happen on their account. If there's a fraudulent charge, what do? You simply dispute it. It's happened to me before. I go through my statement each month online, and I simply, if I ever detect fraud, I simply click the dispute button that's right next to the charge, and all of a sudden that liability is taken off of me, put on the credit card company, and they have to now resolve it. I'll never lose my money. In fact, no consumer has ever lost a dime when there's been fraudulent charges on a credit card because of this. So think of it as an extra line of defense that you have when you use a credit card to keep the fraud victims or to keep the people committing the fraud away from your money. Now, that's completely in contrast to your debit card. With your debit card, the people that are committing the fraud have a direct access to your money. They have an electronic source to get right to your money through your debit card. And if they succeed and you become a fraud victim, now the liability is on you. You've lost your money, and now you're liable to have to do everything to get your money back. And this happened to a client of mine where over $2,000 was taken out of her account, and it took her several weeks to get this resolved. In the meantime, it all worked and she got her money back. But the thing is, she lost real money there over those couple of weeks of when that took place. So now she's out the $2,000 while she's working feverishly with stress and everything going on to get that money back into her account. So you are liable when it happens, when fraud happens on a debit card, whereas on the credit card, like I said, you're not liable. And the thing that concerns us today with debit card usage is skimmers, obviously people seeing passcodes. You've heard all this, the horror stories. Is staying away from that, going to the credit card, knowing that you have peace of mind, that you're not liable if anything goes bad and you have that extra line of defense. So that's why we're fans of making sure you use a traditional credit card and not a debit card. Some additional items that I want to share with you too is that there are other benefits to using a credit card besides just the liability side of it. One is that it's building your credit score. It's making you better. If you keep those credit utilization ratios that I talked about in the last video at 30% or less, it's going to strengthen your credit score. And one of the things that we see millennials hurt themselves that are trying to stay off the credit grid by being cash, using debit cards and just using cash, is that they're hurting them by not building credit for when they will need to borrow money in the future for student loans or car loans or mortgages. So one benefit of credit card usage on top of the liability is building your credit score. Another advantage that you have is you're borrowing somebody else's money. Therefore, what you have to think of is when you use the debit card, that money is taken out of your account immediately. When you use a credit card, you're borrowing the credit card company's money for 30 days. So you're allowing to borrow somebody else's money for 30 days and then pay them back. I recommend that. Why use yours when you can use somebody else's? Now, again, we recommend credit card usage, but paying it in full every month. You don't want to carry balances and be subject to the interest. You get now rewarded today. In this credit card day and age, credit cards are throwing money around for you to use them. So have it be airline miles, points, cashback, rebates, whatever it may be, whatever you want to choose as your reward, credit cards bring rewards to the table that you don't have when you use your debit card. So when you start adding all these together, that's what tilts the side of saying use the traditional credit card, don't use your debit card. Also, all those transactions that you see that are all now for every bank out there, it's amazing. When I get a client, I'll see their bank statements. When we do mortgages, we have to look at your bank statements. And now I can see where they spent all their money at. And every bank out there and every banker knows where you're spending all your money at when you're using your debit card. Again, you get privacy. That's all going to only be on the credit card statement and not for the world to see on your bank statement. Plus, your bank statement will shrink too. Some added other benefits to this. So in summary, use the traditional credit card for purchases. Don't use your debit card. And the only thing really you should be using your debit card for is your cash withdrawals from ATM. Again, making sure that they're not fraudulently hooked up with a skimmer. And pay that credit card statement off in full every month and keep that balance at 30% of the credit limit. You do all these things, you're doing the right things with your money. Hope you enjoyed this Conarchy's Corner. Talk to you next time on Conarchy's Money Corner.